Toxic masculinity. It is like a suit of armor. You feel trapped within. You want to caress, but all you can do is crush. You want to be seen in your humanity, but no one can see you behind all that plate armor, yourself included. Today, I want to take a closer look at the armor and explore the parts that make it up. This is, at the same time, to present a language that we can use to talk about what it means to be a man today and what's actually happening when masculinity turns toxic. Starting with an interesting statistic relating to disagreements between intimate heterosexual partners. I will ask the same-sex partners in the room to decide for themselves how this might speak to you. The statistic comes from the writings of John Gottman, PhD, who has revolutionized the study of marriage by using rigorous scientific procedures to observe the habits of couples. Through careful observation over many years, he has determined that when a couple disagrees with one another, doesn't matter whether the marriage is happy or unhappy, a whopping 85% of the time, it is the wife who brings up the touchy issue and pushes to resolve it. The wife brings up the touchy issue, and 85% of the time, what does the husband say out loud? I don't want to talk about it. If she is successful in engaging him and he's in the conversation whether he likes it or not, what's your best bet about what he is thinking? I'll do anything to make her shut up. We're truth-telling today, folks. We're truth-telling. The man sounds like he is being trapped. He might think that that is so because of her, but it is not. Listen to what Dr. Gottman says. In 85% of marriages, the stonewaller is the husband. This is not because of some lack on the man's part. The reason lies in our evolutionary heritage. Anthropological evidence suggests that we evolved from hominids whose lives were circumcised by very rigid gender roles, since those were advantageous to survival in a harsh environment. The females specialized in nurturing children, while the males specialized in cooperative hunting. As any nursing mother can tell you, the amount of milk you produce is affected by how relaxed you feel, which is related to the release of the hormone oxytocin in the brain. So natural selection would favor a female who could quickly soothe herself and calm herself down after feeling stressed. Her ability to remain composed could enhance her children's chances of survival by optimizing the amount of nutrition that they received. But in the male, natural selection would reward the opposite response. For these early cooperative hunters, maintaining vigilance was a key survival skill. So males whose adrenaline kicked in readily and who did not calm down so easily were more likely to survive and to procreate. Gottman goes on to say, to this day, the male cardiovascular system remains more reactive than the female and slower to recover from stress. For example, if a man and woman suddenly hear a very loud, brief sound like a blowout, most likely his heart will beat faster than hers and stay accelerated for far longer. The same goes for blood pressure. His will become more elevated and stay higher longer. The husband feels trapped when the wife wants to bring up the touchy issue, but both he and she need to know that she is not the bad guy. There is no bad guy. It's evolution. It's biology. Male bodies experience emotional overload more quickly and more intensely than female bodies do. Men's bodies are softer and way more vulnerable than they know. And when men don't know this or consciously work with this, they compensate with the armor. One's intimate partner wants to discuss a touchy subject, and the man wearing his armor stonewalls. He shuts down. The toxicity is oozing here. It would be far better if he simply acknowledged that he, by virtue of having a male body, experiences emotional overload more quickly, more intensely, and for a longer period of time than his partner. Maturity would then dictate that he is going to proactively learn techniques for tolerating the fire of his emotions. Genuine male maturity is just that, to be able to stand in the fire of your emotions and be calm. One of the lies that men are told is that masculinity is about something external. Muscles, paycheck, sports car, lover on the arm. No. Masculinity, mature masculinity, is fundamentally interior. When a man's interior life remains unknown by him, he can never be mature. That's when it turns toxic. He reflexively reaches for his armor, and what he does is not necessarily something big and egregious. He doesn't necessarily do something big and egregious. He can do small, everyday things too, like pouting, being sarcastic. All those pictures you saw a moment ago, right? No one's going to get arrested for that. But that's still toxic masculinity. Being critical, being passive-aggressive, being over-controlling. This is toxic masculinity too. Today we are turning our investigation inward to understand why. Consider this story from David Wexler, PhD, which he tells in his book, When Good Men Behave Badly. It's a great title. Toxic masculinity is by no means the sole preserve of bad men. Here's the story. On a leisurely Saturday afternoon, I returned home from food shopping, put the groceries on the kitchen counter, headed off to my daughter's room to say hello. She was sitting and reading a magazine. She looked up at me with one of her beaming smiles. This is a terrific mirror. Then I looked around her room. World War III had descended. Clothes everywhere, books, papers strewn. All parents know this story. I shook my head and smiled and said, "So when's the maid coming?" I knew better. My wife and I had made a firm pact to leave the issue of the darn room alone and, like all intelligent parents, keep our battles to the big ones. But I couldn't keep my mouth shut. My daughter's smile turned to ice. She glazed over, gave me a dismissive wave. I left feeling stupid and injured. Her glazed and scornful look was like the broken mirror, and it reflected back to me a picture that I did not like. So I walked into the kitchen, where my wife was putting away some of the groceries. She said casually, "Oh, I wanted those little yogurts. The ones you bought are too big." Now, on a scale of nasty and critical comments, with 100 being horribly insulting, this was about like an 11. But I exploded nonetheless. Fine! You don't like the way I shop? I'll just do it all over again. Give me those yogurts. Give me the receipt. I'm going to go right back there and get those yogurts exactly the way you want them. My wife looked at me and she said, "What the heck's wrong with you?" I stormed out to the store. I came back in a huff, slamming the door, new yogurt in hand. My wife was sitting on the couch. She calmly repeated, "What the heck's wrong with you?" We talked for a while, and it all fell into place. And that's the story. And now, Let's get to the place where they eventually got, sitting there on the couch. Did you see how Wexler put on the armor? Do you see that? Fine! You don't like the way I shop, I'll just do it all over again. This is a good man behaving badly. How many of you good men out there am I speaking to this morning? I'm raising my hand because I'm just glad I have an opportunity to share other people's experiences, because I just don't want to get that vulnerable with you. I'm just, I love you, but whatever, okay? Whew. Why? But why? Something about broken mirrors. Something about feeling injured. Wexler is using language from a theory called self-psychology. The theory paints a picture of where a person's sense of self comes from. It's never self-created. It is never do it yourself. It is always created through interactions between people, important people in your life, like teachers, right? You get that? That song that Don sung? That's self-psychology right there. It's always created through interactions between people, as in the young child says to his mother or father, "Look at me, look at me." If you have a kid, have you ever seen that, heard that? Yeah. And he is doing this, she is doing this because he feels a deep internal need to look into the faces of his parents and see himself reflected back. He needs to see their bright eyes, which say to him, "You are wonderful." He needs to see their brilliant smile, which says to him, "You make me happy." He needs to see this over and over again until a positive contagion takes place and he is able to create these same feelings for himself. I am wonderful. I am happy. That is how you create a self. Most people probably know what it takes to learn how to ride a bike, but few people really know what it takes to learn how to have a functioning self. Self-psychology tells the story. It also helps us understand why there are so many selves out there and in here that sometimes, maybe even most times, don't feel vital, don't feel worthy. Selves that are like leaky cups. Joy is poured in, and it isn't held. It drains out. The cup has cracks. The mirrors that were supposed to mirror vitality and worth back to us were unreliable. Sometimes they were whole, sometimes they were broken. Even in the best of situations, the mirroring we received as children could have been incomplete. Thus, a child develops, says Wexler, gaps. He develops gaps in his sense of self. He mistrusts and disrespects his own internal signals and states he no longer paints in all the colors. He doubts his own self-worth and competence. He desperately turns elsewhere for validation, and he becomes especially excessively sensitized to signals that might suggest he is unappreciated, unneeded, unsuccessful. Wexler is a good guy. And like all good guys, he's got gaps in his sense of self. The mirror of his daughter, when she beams that beautiful smile at him, feels so good, but when her smile turns to ice, it gets through a gap in his sense of self, and it stabs at his very heart, and he feels crushed by shame, which is intolerable. The shame feeling is like being choked to death. That is what shame feels like. So you fight back ferociously. All of this is as true for women as it is for men. It's just that men are far less likely to be aware of these dynamics, and they are far more likely to withdraw or to act out when their needs are not being met. And there's a third thing, too. It has to do with the uniquely powerful role of intimate partners in men's lives. Wexler's daughter just sets the stage. It was Wexler's wife, when she made that comment about the yogurt, that made him explode. because of the look of love and what happens when that look goes away. Remember that song? Do you remember that song? The look of love? The look of love is in your eyes, a look your smile can't disguise. When it takes my breath away, I can hardly wait to hold you, feel my arms around you. How long I have waited just to love you. Now that I have found you, you've got the look of love. It's on your face, a look that time cannot erase. Wexler says that this look is one of the most potent forces in the psychology of the male. Men crave to be seen like this by their intimate partner. To be seen like this is to look into a mirror that reflects back an image of a man who is sexy and smart and competent and important and wanted. Men give so much power to this look. So when it goes away, despite what the song says, when it goes away, when the mirror is broken, when the honeymoon is over, when your wife tells you that you just got the wrong thing of yogurt, it is truly shattering. So you put the armor on, to armor up, to defend against the shame. I really want us to hear this part, how heterosexual men invest incredible power in the women in their lives. So much so that a woman can feel oppressively burdened by this, and a man can feel humiliated by the degree of his dependency on her. It is a twisted up dynamic, but understandable. For one thing, women, for men, can trigger emotional awakening. In the presence of his beloved, a man feels emotional aliveness and freedom. Straight men can express themselves with women in ways that they never would with other guys. For another thing, women, for men, are often the definers of manhood. You know you are a man if your woman says so. All my life, says one of Wexler's clients, I have been sure that I was weak, a coward, because I never stood up to my abusive old man. But when I start to tell my wife about these feelings, and she looks into my eyes and starts tearing up, and she tells me how much closer she feels to me, it's like she believes in me. If she sees me as being okay as a man, then maybe I am. That's what Wexler's client says. It is so understandable that a man would give so much of his power to women. The problem again and again is the toxic masculine armor and what causes a man to pull that stuff on. Wexler's wife tells Wexler he didn't get the right yogurt. And he explodes because she does not look at him with a look of love, but he needs that look desperately to feel validated as a man. It is not just yogurt we're talking about here, it's his manhood at stake. As for Wexler's wife afterwards, she's just sitting on the couch going, what the heck just happened? She is missing her partner. She never signed up to be where the buck of Wexler's masculinity and general self-worth stops. She didn't sign up for that. She just wants someone to be her comrade in a challenging world where messy daughters can make you want to tear your hair out. And a world where much, much worse can happen, the suicide of people you love. That's what she wants. And that's what partners of all men want, gay or straight. Here is what men need to do to achieve a more mature masculinity. Number one, know that true masculinity is about what is internal, not what is external. Do not show me your paycheck. Show me how you soothe your vulnerable male body when you are feeling stressed out. Show me how, when you are in an argument with somebody and the wheels of your composure are about to come off, that you know how to care for yourself in that moment. And that the way you do that, for example, is to ask for a 20-minute timeout, to ask for what you need. Show me that. Number two, take back some of your power from your intimate partner. The look of love and its absence will always be of tremendous influence. But we need to get real. Our partners have complex lives of their own. They got worries and fears and flaws of their own, and they do not necessarily say things or make decisions in ways that are purely calculated to hurt us. It's not always about us. But isn't that the self-talk we indulge in? To explain how someone has hurt us, why they have hurt us, why we are hurting. She said the thing about the yogurt because she wanted to make me feel bad. No. The realistic goal, says Wexler, is for you to become more resilient and flexible about the qualities and quantities you need in order to feel reasonably fulfilled. In other words, to learn how to focus on the half-full glass of what you do have rather than on the half-empty glass of what she was supposed to offer all the time, but doesn't. Finally, the third thing men need to do to achieve a more mature masculinity: cultivate a "we're in this together" attitude with your intimate partner. I am not sure it is ever possible to cease from desiring the look of love from one's intimate partner. Do not get me wrong, I crave that look. We all crave that look. I am not sure it is possible to remain unaffected when you don't see that look, when it's absent. But what is possible is to intentionally bring yourself back to the image of you and your partner as comrades in a world full of challenges. And if she is not looking at you right now with that look of love, don't allow that hurt to make you think she is the enemy, and therefore you put the armor on, and therefore you criticize, you say sarcastic things, you pout, you go all passive-aggressive, and so on. What you do instead is you take a deep breath, and you say to yourself, we are in this thing together. She is in a foul mood. She has been under a lot of stress lately, but she will not be like that forever. It is just temporary. It will bounce back. We are partners. We are in this thing together. 1, 2, 3. Do these things, and you have just taken the armor off, and you will keep it off because you don't need it. A better life is waiting for you.